A better route. Chapter 135. Yahiko really couldn't help but be impressed by level Conan was at now. He hadn't managed to land so much as one attack on her, the only thing he'd actually managed to do was take out her summons. She on the other hand, had blown him up, cut him, and tried to break any bone that he would have had in his body if he wasn't reanimated. Conan couldn't let up though, because she knew Yahiko wasn't to be underestimated. He hadn't even used his most powerful attack yet. She grew out her paper wings and flew at Yahiko, creating 2 mechanical arms as well. Before long she was right in front of him with her arms closing in for an attack. Yahiko caught the attack with his sword. "What are you doing? This gives me the chance to realce this energy back onto you." Conan smirked. "Actually, you won't be doing much of anything with this old thing." In a flash her mechanical arms twisted and snapped the sword in half. Of course the mechanical arms had more than enough strength to take out a simple blade. She grabbed him with all 4 of his arms and hurled him into the air as high as she could. Then turned both her arms in the Azura cannons and pointed them right for him. The glow began form around them as they fired the massive blasts of chakra up into the air. However, when Conan was able to see Yahiko again there wasn't a single mark on him. He was surrounded by tentacles of water that were glowing. Conan scowled when she realized what he'd done. "Damn it, I was hoping to beat him before he used that attack." Yahiko fell to the ground, landing safely with the help of the water tentacles. He was using a technique that had made him strong enough to lead the first Akatsuki, his flowing water chakra defense. It surrounded his body with water which had chakra channeled into it like his blade did that allowed him to flow chakra through his water and away from his body. However, unlike his blade, it couldn't return the energy of the attacks and could only stop chakra, nothing else. That meant Conan did still have one thing that she knew would work. She pointed her metal arms back at Yahiko and began to change their form a little bit. She fired 2 explosives from her arm which Yahiko merely smacked away with his tentacles. "Come on Conan-chan, you didn't think that was actually gonna work, did you?" Yahiko was surrounded by smoke now so he couldn't really see anything. He could hear Conan responding though, "I just wanted to make sure you couldn't see before I did this." The ground under Yahiko's feet began to shake and a fissure like the one Mito had used grew under his feet. He fell inside, but not before the smoke cleared enough to see Conan had created some kind of jackhammer-like device to create the hole he was now falling inside. There were thousands, maybe millions, of paper bombs around him inside the fissure. An explosion was heard that rocked the entire battlefield as the fissure caved in on itself. Conan looked at the rubble and sighed, "You were good Yahiko, but not good enough. Come on people. We've gotta go and check on the healers and make sure they're not hurt." Conan may have won her fight, but Nagato wasn't having nearly as much luck. Mito was running him into the ground with just about everything she had. She deactivated her 5th gate moments ago and Nagato was having a hard time even keeping up with her. She was so fast that couldn't even land an attack. He'd thought about pulling her in with his almighty pull, but Mito's raw strength didn't make that a great idea. On top of that, she had summoned multiple slugs and had them firing acid at him from every angle. As if that wasn't enough, what damage Nagato had managed to do Mito just healed without so much as a hand seal. He was trying to avoid Mito's lightning-quick attacks, keep away from her slug's deadly spray, and had to try and do enough damage to her so that she couldn't undo it. At least with Naruto he'd had all 6 of his paths to handle them. That made strategizing so much easier since you could attack from multiple angles at the same time. His only saving grace had been his almighty push, which had saved his ass multiple times. With that he could usually stop most of Mito's attack and try launch some kind of counter-attack. Speaking of counter-attack, Nagato was currently getting one ready, summoning jutsu. Mito looked up to see some kind of giant bird with a huge beak flying out of the smoke. Luckily, she knew she could take care of it pretty easily. The bird flew above her and tried to crush it with its beak. She jumped out of the way. Nice try, bird brain. Let's see how you feel about this. She channeled chakra into her fist and gave it a super strength charged punch right in its eye. The bird screeched as it was launched into a pool of acid. Nagato rolled his eyes at the pun Mito made. That was one of the worst jokes I've ever heard in my life. Mito frowned, and that was easiest time I've ever had beating a summon. Nagato was about to respond when he felt his body move and getting ready for another attack. His best attack, to be precise. Mito, whatever power you've got left, you're going to want to use it. I'm about to use an attack that I've only ever seen one person beat. Mito's confident demeanor went away and she started to get serious. She activated her Sage mode, her skin turning white and blue like usual. Alright, Mr. Badass, do your worst. Nagato raised up his hands and a black ball began to rise into the sky. Planetary devastation. Mito got very nervous very fast. Naruto had told her about this attack, and if it hadn't been for his tailed beast bomb he might not have made it out of there alive. She felt the ground rising from her feet and start to rise towards the ball. Luckily, like Naruto, she thought she might have something that just might do the trick. She put her hands together. Sage art, slug resizing technique. Mito started to grow in size a little bit, but the devastation was too fast. It slammed her into the center of the ball as the rest of the ground began to surround it. Nagato looked horrified. Come on, Mito, I can't kill you too. Nagato's fear was soon ended as cracks began to form on the ball and a giant hand burst out. It looked like when in Sage mode Mito could increase her size just like the slugs did. She burst out of the ball and must have been at least as big as a tailed beast, if not bigger. Mito launched herself right at Nagato and landed right on top of him, or at least her foot did. Apparently she was still incredibly fast when a giant. She pulled her foot off of him just enough so that she could stomp right back on him if she needed to. Nagato was completely embolized, several cracks all around his body, and he was crushed deeply into the ground. Nagato smiled at her from his spot on the ground. You just might be even stronger than your father was. I think he'd be proud of you. Mito had to keep herself from smiling too. I'd love to stay here a chat, but I need to finish you off now. Nagato nodded. Do what you have to do. She made some hand seals and spit acid on in the hole her foot had made, making a pool of acid and disintegrating him completely. With that she deactivated Sage mode, shrank back down, and nearly passed out. Mito needed to get back to the tents and rest, because this fight had more or less wiped her out. But first she turned to the ceiling squad that was behind her. I don't know if his body is try and rebuild itself, but if it does, seal him right away before he fully reforms. We don't want this guy back in the fight. Last but not least, there was the battle raging between the two Sannin. Tsunade wasn't having an easy time with her husband though. After she'd taken down Gamaken, she tried to take down Jiraiya down too. Problem was, he could take one hell of beating and act like it was nothing. She had her strength of 100 active, but even the punches from that didn't seem to be enough to finish him. He just kept standing up, dusting himself off, and getting ready for another attack. Tsunade couldn't let him win though. There was almost no one else besides her who could beat him, and anyone else who could was too far away right now. It had to be Tsunade who beat her husband. She was standing across from him getting her next move ready. Tsunade stomped her foot into the ground, causing it to shake, and Jiraiya to start losing his balance. Then leapt next to him and grabbed his shirt, tossing him over her head. Next thing he knew, Tsunade had him by the ankle and he was slammed on his back. Jiraiya still wasn't losing even a second. He did a little spin and kicked Tsunade in the face, causing her to lose her grip. Jiraiya winced at the mark he left. I hate to mess up the beautiful face of yours, Heim. Tsunade couldn't stop herself from smirking. even in a situation like this you just have to hit on me, don't you? Jiraiya grinned but was making some hand seals as he did. When it comes to you, I just can't help myself. Toad oil bomb. Tsunade watched as an orange bubble of oil came right for her and she jumped out of the way. It hit ground behind her and Jiraiya started to make some more hand seals. Flame bullet. The bullet set the oil ablaze while Jiraiya one last set of handles, swamp of the underworld. Tsunade could see what he was doing now. On one side of her there was a flaming wall and on the other side was a swamp that could swallow her whole. She was now completely boxed in. Damn it, Jiraiya-kun, how the hell am I supposed to work around this? Jiraiya was trying to think of that very same thing. You know you can't outstrength me, I've got too much raw power for that. Keep in mind, you just need to immobilize me so that you can get that seal on me. Don't try and beat me, just get me to point where I can't run so that you can get that seal on me. Tsunade realized he was right. She suddenly felt very bad about bitching at him for always trying to teach her about seals. It might only be thanks to those lessons that she could cast this seal. She suddenly got an idea that she thought just might work. Tsunade jumped into the air and got another heavenly kick of pain ready. Only this time he didn't land on Jiraiya, she landed right in front of him. The kick caused a stone to shoot up from the ground and launched Jiraiya into the swamp. Jiraiya loved her plan. Oh, I get it. You're gonna use the swamp to slow me down so that you can get the seal on me. Tsunade was already next to swamp with her scroll ready. Jiraiya was trying to climb out of the swamp but Tsunade was too quick with the seal. It was already on his stomach with the scroll wrapping around his body. As glad as she was that the fight was over, she also wished she could have more time to speak with her husband. Thanks for the help, Jiraiya-kun. I don't think could have won without you. Jiraiya joked, you also wouldn't have been fighting if it wasn't for me. Tsunade coaxed back some tears, I'm gonna miss you, Jiraiya-kun. It's hard doing all of this without you. Jiraiya smiled gently at her as sealing was almost complete. You're not someone to give up just because something's hard time. I know you can do this because you're one of the strongest people I've ever met and you've passed that on to our daughter. It's why I love you as much as I do. I'll see so someday, Haim, but until I do, Dan and I will be waiting for you. Tsunade couldn't have been more moved by his words as the sealing was finished and Jiraiya sunk into the swamp below. She wanted to fall down and just start crying, but she knew that there were people back at the tents that needed help. Once she found a way to get over the swamp, she made her way back to the others so that she could help everyone who needed it. See you in the next one.